Hunter was the first to ask the question, why do they fall when we stand? But no one remembers him saying it. Maybe because he vanished before the words could echo through the room, or maybe because some truths erase themselves the moment they're spoken aloud. All I know is that I was there, and I remember the way the light dimmed as if the room itself exhaled. The screen flickered, just once. One blink. Hunter was gone. No sound, no scream, not even the scrape of a shoe. Just his phone still glowing on the desk, open to a voice memo app that kept recording silence for 6 more hours. You don't know me, but you've seen people like me, the ones who never quite look away from the sky, the ones who hesitate before boarding elevators, the ones who sleep facing the door. We remember things no one else talks about. We listen for signals in the white noise between radio stations. And if you're still watching this, maybe you're one of us. Or maybe you're about to become one. It started with gravity, that's what no one talks about. Not lights in the sky, not abductions, not metal implants or cow mutilations. Gravity. It's too ordinary, too heavy, too consistent. But what if it's not? What if it's the one thing about us they never understood? Last winter, in a suburb, outside Omaha, a baby named Claire, 10 months old, looked up from her crib in the middle of the night and spoke clearly into the darkness. No babble, no gurgle, one word, a name. Adler. Not her family's name. Not in any book her parents ever read. But when they searched it, they found an old message board, shut down in 2007, where a man named Adler had posted about weight, fluctuations on alien crafts, and the theory that Earth's gravity wasn't just a force. It was a defense mechanism, a weapon masked as nature. Claire's father laughed it off until their baby began to float, just an inch off the mattress, just for a second. But he hasn't laughed since. There's a reason aliens never stay long, why their ships buckle if they hover too low, why they can lift entire trees on their planets but stagger beneath our sun. Earth doesn't just hold us, it tests us, crushes down until only something born here can breathe freely. That's why they call us weak, because they've never lasted long enough to understand what it takes to survive here. But the scariest part isn't what they don't know, it's what they've just started to learn. 3 nights ago, a voice, my grandmother's, dead, since E93, came through the intercom at a closed Air Force base in Colorado, repeating one sentence in a tone so calm it made a colonel cry, "They've adjusted for the weight." And if that's true, if they've finally solved for gravity, then what happens when they stop falling? The message from the intercom didn't end, it stopped. Cut off mid-breath like someone had yanked the cord from her throat. I played the recording again, over and over, because I couldn't shake the voice. It was her, not a copy, not a mimic. It was my grandmother's exact voice, the breath at the end of every sentence, the small Midwestern lilt she always tried to hide in front of strangers. And the line, "They've adjusted for the weight." It wasn't just a warning. It was an apology, as if she knew they were coming because she told them how. But here's the part I haven't admitted until now, not even to myself. I shouldn't have been able to hear it. I wasn't at the base. The audio file just appeared on my laptop, no sender, no timestamp, just a file called Najang 33 WAV, tucked inside a folder I didn't make. I only noticed it because the folder icon flickered like it was breathing, like a lung expanding and collapsing. Just once. It shouldn't have been there. I don't download things. I barely even use this machine except to write. But there it is, and when I opened it, I knew that voice. I hadn't heard her in 3 decades, but it lit up something deep, older than memory, closer to instinct. My skin remembered her before my mind did. Since then, things have been different. At first it was small, a scraping sound under the floorboards at night, like furniture shifting in an empty room, the hallway light switching on even though I live alone. I told myself I was tired, overstimulated. the kind of exhausted that makes the edges of reality blur a little. But then I started finding things. A key I didn't recognize in my coat pocket. A matchbook from a diner in Arkansas I've never been to, and a photo, folded twice, stuffed inside my copy of Contact by Carl Sagan. A photo of me, but younger, much younger, standing in front of a house I've never seen, wearing clothes I don't remember owning, and behind me, a man, smiling, one hand resting on my shoulder like he belonged there, like I knew him. When I flipped the photo over, there was one word written in soft pencil: Henry. I don't know anyone named Henry. At least I didn't think I did. But the next morning when I checked my voicemail, there was a message waiting from a number I didn't recognize. It had no origin, no area code, just 11 digits like a number from some country that doesn't exist anymore. I played it, listened to it once, then deleted it because I couldn't stand how it made me feel. But I remember every word. Hey, it's Henry. I know it's been a while, but they're moving faster than we thought. You need to go to the basement, yours, not mine. There's something taped under the third stair. But don't stay down there too long. It remembers you. I don't have a basement, except now I do. Somehow in the middle of the night, a door appeared behind the coat rack. Clean frame, brass handle. It wasn't there before, I would have noticed. But there it was, waiting. The wood was older than the rest of the house, like it had been cut from a different century. And when I opened it, the air that came up was cold and damp and thick with that basement silence, dense and pressurized like being underwater. I told myself I wouldn't go down, that this was a dream or some elaborate breakdown brought on by sleep deprivation and old grief. But you know how this works. Once you know there's a stair that leads to something, you have to see what's at the bottom. So I went down. Third, stair from the top, I found it. Something, wrapped in plastic, taped to the underside with crumbling duct tape. My hands were shaking too hard to open it at first. But when I finally unwrapped it, it wasn't a document. It wasn't a key. It was a cassette. No label. Just a strip of blue tape across the top. No writing. Just a color. I don't own a cassette player. But 2 hours later, there was one on my kitchen table. A gray Sony Walkman that looked exactly like the one I had when I was 9, except this one had a fresh battery in it. And when I played the tape, I heard myself, not recently. Me, as a child. A recording of me speaking in a flat voice like I was reading a script. I said a name I've never heard before. I said, the gravity is emotional, not physical. That's why they fail. That's why they cry before they fall. I heard myself sobbing quietly after that. And then something else. Something not human breathing at the edge of the tape. That's when she showed up, Elise. Said she was an old friend. Said we'd grown up together on a farm in Missouri and that we used to tell each other stories about monsters under the bed. And the way the stars looked like holes poked in the ceiling of the world. I don't remember her. I told her that. She just smiled and said, "That's okay, you weren't supposed to." But then she handed me a sketch. A child's drawing on yellowed paper. Crayons pressed too hard into the page. It showed 2 stick figures holding hands. One was labeled me. The other said Elise. Behind them, a scribbled circle with jagged black lines coming out of it, like a hole in the sky. I asked where she got it. She said, "You gave it to me the day before." They landed. The day gravity cracked. She keeps showing up now, in different clothes with different hair, sometimes in the middle of the night. Once I found her asleep on my couch. When I asked how she got in, she looked confused and said, "You told me to wait here in case you forgot again." Forgot what? She never says. And here's what's breaking me down, slowly, inch by inch. I'm beginning to believe her. The gaps in my memory are getting bigger. I'll go to sleep with the television on and wake up to footage I've never seen. Grainy VHS static showing places I recognize but can't name. There's always a figure in the background, standing still, watching, never approaching, never moving. I checked hospital records last week. There is a hunter listed under my emergency contacts. My file says he visited me in 2018 after a concussion, but I don't remember any accident. I don't remember ever being in that hospital. When I asked Elise about it, she went pale, whispered, "They tried to take it from you. You must have buried it deeper than they expected." She says gravity isn't just about mass. She says it's memory, guilt, the weight of knowing what comes next. That aliens didn't underestimate us, they overestimated themselves. They didn't think emotions could kill, that fear could fracture steel, that grief could warp metal, like heat. But now they're adjusting, calibrating, learning to carry the things that break us. And if they've really figured it out, if they've made themselves heavy enough to stand here without dying, then the next time they land, they won't fall. They'll walk right into our homes, into our skin, into our lives. And the worst part is, I think one of them already has. I think Elise isn't here to help me remember. I think she's here to make me forget. And if I let go of one more memory, if I lose even one more second of who I was, I'm scared I won't know what it means to fall anymore, or worse. I'll stop noticing that I already have. For days I chased a thread, a thin, flickering line of hope that maybe, just maybe, I was finally close to the truth. The kind of truth that burns through the noise and leaves you raw but alive. It started when I found an old box buried deep in the attic, wrapped in brittle newspaper from 1979. The headlines screaming about unexplained disappearances in Midwestern towns and the gravity of fear. Inside was a yellow diary, its pages cracked and trembling, written in shaky cursive that felt eerily familiar. It belonged to a woman named Marlene, my grandmother's best friend, or so I thought. The diary was a revelation. Marlene wrote about strange occurrences in our town decades before I was born. Neighbors vanishing without trace, flickers of light in the sky that made the grass grow black, and the unsettling feeling that something heavy was pressing down on everyone's hearts. But most haunting was the entry about a night when she whispered a name into the darkness. Adler, the same name Claire spoke months ago. Marlene's words suggested that the earth itself was not a safe place, that the weight we felt was not just gravity but a kind of living thing, something that could reach inside your mind and squeeze until you broke. She wrote, "They came not to conquer but to learn, and we are their lesson." The more I read, the more the pieces fit like a twisted puzzle. The strange audio files, the memories slipping away, the appearances of Elise. Maybe she was a warning, a guide or a ghost tethered to this cycle of weight and forgetting. I clung to the idea that understanding this history would shield me, that the mystery wasn't supernatural, but a deeply buried secret kept from us by those who feared what would happen if the truth came out. Then, in a dusty corner of the town library, I stumbled upon a faded newspaper clipping about a man named Henry. He was a local who vanished in '79, last seen near the old air base. The article was vague, hinting at government involvement and experiments on human perception. It mentioned how Henry's last known words were something about the gravity shifting, and how he'd left behind a tape that was never found. Suddenly everything clicked. Henry was the man in the photo, the mysterious voice on my voicemail. The link between past and present. I felt like I'd cracked the code. Maybe the government had tried to weaponize gravity, or had stumbled onto something they couldn't control, and the adjustment was their cover-up. It explained the missing memories, the strange technology, and the creeping dread. I convinced myself that if I could find Henry's tape, I could expose the truth, free myself from the shadows clawing at my mind. But then the tape arrived. It wasn't in the basement. It wasn't in any locked drawer or hidden compartment. It was on my doorstep, wrapped in a brown paper bag, heavy and warm to the touch, like it had just been pressed into my hands by a living thing. The label was a single word scratched into the tape's surface. Forget. I hesitated before playing it. The room felt colder. The air thickened until breathing felt like pulling a stone through my chest. When I hit play, I expected revelations, confessions, recordings of meetings, cries for help. Instead, what came out was a looped fragment of static and white noise, pierced by a child's laughter that sounded like my own. And beneath the laughter, a whispered voice that said, "You're not crazy, they lied to you. But the weight is inside. Always." I scrambled to stop it, but the tape wouldn't eject. The player hummed louder, vibrating through the floor, until suddenly the lights flickered and died. In the darkness, I thought I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, and just outside the door. Then a memory I didn't know I had washed over me, the night I was 5, the night my father disappeared. Remembered the heavy silence that followed, how my mother refused to talk about it, how I was told to forget. But now I saw it differently. That night had been the first time the weight pressed down, the first time something unseen had come into our home and reshaped our reality. I remembered waking up to a shadow in the hallway, something shifting just beyond the edge of the light, watching me with eyes that didn't blink. I'd screamed, but no one came. The memory wasn't just mine. It was a warning, a blueprint for everything that came after. The tape stopped. The lights flickered back, but the feeling didn't leave. Something deeper had been awakened, watching from the corners of my mind. The unspoken force behind every lost memory, every vanished person, every whispered name. It wasn't alien or human. It was something that fed on doubt, thrived in silence, and made you question everything you ever believed about yourself and the world. And then I saw it, just for a moment, in the reflection of my window. A shape so faint it could have been a trick of the light, a distortion of the glass. But it was there, watching, waiting. I rewound the tape, listening again. The laughter was me, but the voice was older, deeper. It wasn't just telling me to forget. It was telling me to believe in forgetting, to embrace it, to become weightless. That's when I realized everything I thought I knew was a lie layered on another lie. The hidden truth wasn't buried in history or government secrets. It was inside me, inside all of us, a glitch in the memory that the world refuses to acknowledge. The real mystery wasn't what they did, but what we allowed ourselves to forget. And the most terrifying part? I'm not sure I want to remember. Because the moment you do, the moment you start to put the pieces together, you'll see the shape waiting behind the truth. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Maybe that's why no one dares to ask. What if gravity isn't what keeps us grounded? What if it's the thing that holds us hostage? The weight wasn't just pulling them down. It's been holding us here, trapping us in a story written by something older than memory itself. And now that story is changing, but the question remains, what happens when the weight finally lets go? There's a pattern I'm starting to see now. Fractures in the static, echoes of voices I can't fully place, faces in the corners of my vision that vanish when I look directly. It isn't just me. I've found them. Others like me, scattered, across cities and small towns, each with their own fractures, their own whispered memories that bleed into dreams, their own tapes and notes and symbols that don't quite fit any known language but scream of the same weight, pressing on all of us. These people are silent, hidden behind layers of fear and confusion, watching as the story folds back on itself like a wound that won't heal, trying to connect dots they weren't meant to see. And here's the worst part. You've been watching them too. I started seeing signs, cryptic messages slipped between the channels of late-night broadcasts, flickering for just a second before the screen went black, sequences of numbers and shapes that look meaningless until you look closer. And suddenly, they map out places, dates, names. I found one etched in the fog on my bathroom mirror, though I haven't touched it since last night. A simple symbol, a circle bisected by a jagged line. It's everywhere now, in graffiti under bridges, carved into tree bark on lonely hiking trails, in the corner of photographs I don't remember taking. It's a signature or a warning. Maybe both. Sometimes I hear them in my dreams. People I've never met standing in rooms that pulse with a low hum. Their faces familiar yet impossible to place. They speak without words, sending images instead. snapshots of clocks running, backwards, of hands grasping empty air, of eyes staring into nothingness. When I wake, I feel their questions twisting inside me. Who are you? Who are we? What did you forget? It's like the memory glitches we've all suffered aren't malfunctions. They're fragments of a shared consciousness trying to bleed through the cracks, a network of lost souls tethered to a force older than any of us can name. And then there's her. Not Elise. Not yet. But someone watching closer than the rest. Someone who appears in the flicker of security cameras just out of focus, who leaves no trace but whose presence bends the air around us. She calls herself Morgan, though no one knows where that name came from, and she's the closest thing to a guide or a guardian in this sea of confusion. Morgan's perspective is different, detached but deeply intimate, like she's outside the storm, narrating it in real time, warning us with cryptic phrases. You were right all along, she says, but the truth isn't what you think. Her messages arrive in unexpected ways, a bookmarked page in a library book, a whispered phrase through static on a phone line, a grainy video clip labeled found footage from 20 years ago that shows a group of people standing in a circle, their faces hidden but their eyes unmistakably human, glowing faintly under a sky that isn't quite ours. She speaks of a force, something older than governments, older than memory, that manipulates reality itself, something that watches from the edges, feeding on identity, rewriting the stories we tell ourselves until we can't trust what we see or who we are. Morgan says that the gaps in our memories, the lost hours, the feelings of déjà vu, they're not glitches but symptoms of control, a slow erasure designed to keep us compliant, tethered to a version of ourselves that's easy to predict and easy to break. They want you fragmented, she warns, because whole people are dangerous. The deeper I dive, the more I question everything. The faces I see in the mirror, the memories I hold dear, the emotions I thought were mine. What if I am part of the experiment? What if my thoughts, my fears, even this story, are just echoes planted to guide me down a path that's already been chosen? And if that's true, then who is really telling the story? Who watches us from the shadows, pulling the strings we can't see? Morgan never answers directly. Instead, she leaves more questions, more signs, like a puzzle meant to be solved by someone who isn't sure if they want the answer. This isn't just a mystery. It's a web, and it's tightening around all of us. You're not crazy. They lied to you. The weight you feel isn't just gravity. It's the pull of something ancient and patient, bending the rules of reality, watching as we stumble blindly through its design. And as you watch this, you realize you're part of it now. The symbols you see, the voices you hear, the moments. You think you've forgotten. They're calling you because the story isn't over. Not by a long shot. The weight has always been there, hasn't it? Not just the gravity that holds our bodies to this spinning rock, but a heavier, unseen burden pressing down on the soul itself. I see it now. The silent force threading through everything we've uncovered, everything we've lost. It's not about what happened. The who, the when, the how, they're just echoes in a larger design. The question is why? Why are we tethered like this? Trapped in a cycle of forgetting and remembering, of disappearing and reappearing, of grasping for truths that shatter when held too close. What does this reveal about us? About what it means to be human? I've come to understand that the weight is a mirror, reflecting our deepest fears and desires, our relentless need for meaning in a world that offers none, or perhaps too many. We are creatures born from stardust and silence, shaped by memories we barely own, carrying the legacy of pain and hope tangled in one breath. The force watching us, whatever it is, seems less like a conqueror and more like a reflection of our own fragile existence, a test of how much we can bear before we dissolve into the void or rise beyond it. In the dim light of my room, with the Diary of Marlene spread open and the tape player silent at my side, I face a choice that feels impossible. To know the truth, to peel back the layers of control and forgetfulness, is to risk everything I've ever believed about myself and the world. But to live in ignorance is to be a prisoner of the very weight that crushes us all. The line between salvation and destruction blurs, and I wonder if the force that manipulates us is outside ourselves or something born from within. Our collective fear, our desperate yearning for freedom, our darkest regrets. I remember my father's disappearance with fresh eyes, no longer as a haunting absence, but as a wound that connects me to everyone else caught in this web. The loss, the silence, the unspoken. These are the ties that bind us. And in that moment I confess to myself a truth I've long buried. I'm terrified. Terrified that uncovering the secret will unravel me, that the pieces I've gathered will fracture the fragile identity I cling to. But I'm also terrified of living a lie, a shadow of myself, forever weighed down by unseen chains. Morgan's messages haunt me still, her cryptic warnings and fragmented truths. Maybe she is right. Maybe the Force wants us fragmented, broken, lost in a labyrinth of false memories and fading identities. Or maybe the real power is in embracing our fragmented selves, in recognizing that the weight we carry is both curse and blessing, the inescapable gravity of being alive and aware. And so I stand at the edge of knowing, caught between fear and hope, between destruction and awakening. The silence in the room stretches like a breath held too long. The air hums with possibility and threat. This moment is no climax in a story, but the opening of a new, terrifying chapter. One where the real question isn't, what is happening to us, but what will we do now that we know? Because to awaken is to be vulnerable. To see beyond the veil is to risk everything for a chance at freedom. And sometimes the deepest truths are those we're not sure we want to find. The weight presses on, but maybe, just maybe, it can also lift us. And as the darkness folds around me, the words come softly, like a breath shared between worlds. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.